On the next episode of Sips, Suds, and Smokes,
whiskey that is finished in a honey cask.
Ish.
First, we got the Davidson Reserve. Actually, 2 different batches. We have the Nashville Barrel Company, batch 1. We have the Nulu. We have the Wheeler's Raid. We have the Wild Turkey American Honey.
Doesn't count.
Rabble.
Yeah,
We have the Starlight. We have the Smooth Ambler, WH Nashville. We have the Jack Daniels Honey. We have the Good
Also
Times.
doesn't count.
Rabble.
Shouldn't count.
We have the Good Times Estate Ryconic, and we have the Belle Meade Honey Cask.
we'll be right back after this break. Brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. And now it's sippin' time.
Hey, welcome to this Sips episode where everything good in life is worth discussing. We are the best thing on at 2 a.m. Like you really have something better to do at 2 a.m.
That NPR channel just blows up at 2.
Really? Do you love the crafting, knitting conversation
it's like world music.
at 2
It's
a.m.?
like trance, like
Time like
2 a.m.
100
Yeah.
best albums.
This was my favorite part about going to sleep as a kid because I'd wake up and turn it
Remember
on.
when it would
It's
be
like
the
reading the Braille edition of
the
Jeopardy.
test line things, and it would be the American anthem.
I'll take fast
It
bumps
would-
for 400.
It would turn off at the end of the night. No one remembers that.
No.
It was the American
No one
anthem.
remembers.
I think you're dating
and then
yourself.
the test,
Yeah,
the
there you
test
go.
lines would
That's
go
it,
on,
Drew.
and there was no 24
Indian head.
hours.
That
Well,
was in the 50s.
It was not.
I'm your host of this of this cat herd. This is good old boy Mike. Joining me at this table is good old gal Julieanna
Hey, everyone.
and good old gal Cary Ann.
Evidently old because I remember the test strips.
Possibly.
pH test strips?
Good old boy Barger is
Hey,
joining us.
girls.
Yes. He's taking on the most expendable crew member role in this
right.
discussion. And good old boy Drew.
Who? What? Where am I?
That's pretty much exactly who you should be. What's going on? Well, our sip segments are all about wine, distilled spirits, tea, and coffee. Here's what we're actually going to discuss on this segment: whiskey that is finished in a honey cask.
Ish.
Ish.
Ish. I think
Yeah.
is how we would do that. Well, what is that, you may ask? And we're going to cover some background and what type of product this not new and it's novel, but it's become very popular with some recent changes in the production technique. Some of us have actually stood in lines for hours.
Yes.
Some of us laughed at those people.
Not this guy.
Some of us wised up
Some
before
of us
they
got
begot.
lucky. Some of us got to know people. Some of us just got, laid out.
I refuse.
Had to lay out on the cash for this, but it actually happens. Julieanna has the lineup of the products we're going to go through in this discussion.
Okay, so here are the products that we're going to discuss today. First, we got the Davidson Reserve. Actually, 2 different batches. We have the Nashville Barrel Company, batch 1. We have the Nulu. We have the Wheeler's Raid. We have the Wild Turkey American Honey.
Doesn't count.
Rabble.
We have the Starlight. We have the Smooth Ambler, WH Nashville. We have the Jack Daniels Honey. We have the Good
Also doesn't
Times.
count.
Rabble.
Shouldn't count.
We have the Good Times Estate Ryconic, and we have the Belle Meade Honey Cask.
That was Good Times and the King's Family Estate Ryconic and the Belle Meade Honey Cask. So
That's what she said.
A very interesting lineup that we have of all these products in this interesting, very blind tasting. Drew?
So what we have done is assemble all 12 of these whiskeys, because there were 2 Davidson Reserves, if you were paying attention, into a blind tasting. They were put into bottles, numbered 1 through 12, and distributed to
All of us.
all of us unsuspecting folks.
Where's the water?
So we tasted all 12.
We did.
Some of us later than others.
Yeah.
Do I get a mirror badge?
Some of us finished them all. Some of us not so
Well, I
much.
finished them all. Half of them went in the trash.
And in that 12, we ranked them all ourselves. And then we got together, built aggregates, and got
fancy.
our top 5. So in this episode, we're going to cover the collective top 5 and then maybe also the bottom 5. Or maybe just the bottom.
Not kings.
But anywho.
So we actually talked about it in advance of who would actually be able to carry off discussing our sips ratings with the best Winnie the Pooh accent, and Barger won the contest. So take it away,
I drew
Barger.
the short
So read
straw.
our
God
sips
love
ratings
you.
for
No
today.
one else
Number
entered
one.
the contest.
Give me a glass of water to wash out my mouth, Piglet.
Very sad.
Nice. But what else do you have?
It's too much Christopher Robin for me.
3. Interesting. What was this again?
Sounds like a muscly-on paperboy to me.
4. Let's keep the secret to ourselves and pour me another.
I think it's actually somebody on the edge that just,
5.
Oh,
my bother. I was unaware anything could be this good.
I don't know if that sound effect is like
Thank
appropriate
you.
for
It's
Winnie
high.
the Pooh.
Barger? Maybe? I'm not really quite sure. Okay. All right. So I know that you're lazy and you just want to know what's the best of the blind right off the bat.
Kings, what?
Kings. All right. So
Is it royalty?
we'll do just that. We're actually going to work our way to the top 5. I would really encourage you to listen to all of the top 5, as there really was not a clear-cut winner. The variances of even these top 5s were actually quite subtle. It was not fully unanimous. I almost thought that we could not rank them and must declare that all of these were actually in the top 5. Thought about that approach, but I thought
Poppycock.
That's a horrible idea.
there's no winner.
This
How
isn't
un-American.
America.
Yeah, kings.
No
Anyway,
participation trophies are here.
we also tried to get some production techniques, actually information from the distillers directly, and some research to
Secret.
figure out, that out. And I'm sorry, but they don't have that info across the board.
They said no.
We're going to make some good guesses.
Proprietary.
Some distillers consider that actually a competitive advantage,
It's
For
not.
what?
They said no.
a competition to the bottom maybe, but anyway. I'm going to actually declare that Nelson Greenbrier has the process as the gold standard, okay? So they took a used whiskey barrel. They actually dumped raw honey into that empty whiskey barrel. Then they emptied the honey and sold it under the Truby label. So yummy. I love that honey. They actually rinsed the barrel out after they dumped the honey out. And then
But why?
they filled the seasoned barrel with whiskey. So there's actually a lot more to it than that, but that's basically the technique, that I'm going to declare as the gold
Well,
standard.
there are good reasons for that. And,
Yeah.
A lot of it is reconstituting the barrel
Tell us
itself.
more, Cary.
well, I don't get to because Mike's going to keep talking.
No, I'm
Here's what. I have actually spoken with distillers about how they do this.
Yes,
Called it.
And also amateurs.
for
I've
sure.
spoken with distillers.
Well, we're all well represented here.
And amateurs. And I would say that most of the distillers that I've spoken to about this process also fall into the amateur category because everybody is just trying to figure out. So here's the thing about honey. No, it's not a burn. It's just like a really difficult thing. The thing about honey, super hydrostatic. You could put honey on one side of the table and water on the other, and the water is going to come across the table.
Agrophobic is the actual term.
Gravitational
So
pull.
that is the absence of water. Go ahead.
Honey is going to suck the life out of a barrel. So it's really difficult to fill a barrel with honey and not have it really like tear the barrel apart.
Sure.
Right? I'm trying to read what Mike wrote here.
Oh, hypertonic,
So,
hypotonic.
all the
it's
things.
chemistry in high school all over again.
It is.
Who
but
knew
it's
it would
a
come in
big deal.
handy? No,
It is.
absolutely.
This is a really different thing from any other way that they finish barrels because honey just really is not about it and it's trying to fight against you the whole time. So there's so much leakage, there's so much stuff going on. So the way that people have tried to figure it out, and then so that's why they don't tell people because they don't want to know that like we figured out this way. I know that as part of a group that has made one of these barrels, we've sort of kind of figured it out. But we
Proprietary.
had our missteps along the way as well. So
Sip
what does
once,
this say?
ignore the
So-
advice, and then execute.
Lordy.
We didn't dump whiskey on the floor.
Basically the process.
So honey's going to suck all the moisture out of the barrel, and then you dump the honey out, and then you do want to rinse that honey out because when you put whiskey in, it's just going to leak like a sieve, and then you're going to lose all your whiskey, and it's not going to taste like
The
honey
warm
or
water
anything
rinse.
else. Yeah, or warm whiskey rinse, depending on the maker.
But the whole point of the thing is you want to have a balance between the bourbon and the honey.
Yes, and that is also tricky to accomplish.
Difficult.
And
It is.
Some of these guys do
No,
it,
it
and
is.
some of these guys don't.
Right.
And leaving the honey in the barrel too long makes a really tannic situation. It's just a lot. So I think this is a pretty new category. Belle Meade has done a really good job at like really pioneering this category, and everybody's trying to figure it out, but it took a long time for them to figure it out. So we're all figuring it out. Anyhow, all the stuff we tasted, so you can't like ignore that there was a bunch of different whiskeys going into these barrels that had honey in them. So anywhere from a 4-year-old bourbon to a 12-year-old bourbon and an 8-year-old rye. So there's a lot of different base liquids going in to get finished. And some of them are great and some of them aren't.
Exactly.
And that's why we're here.
Most of them aren't.
So Julieanna was going to talk about the production
Okay.
choices real quick.
So we're going to do Davidson Reserve. Actually, 2 different batches. Nashville Bear Company, 1 batch. Nulu, Wheeler's Raid, Wild Turkey American Honey, Starlight, Smooth Ambler, WH Nashville, Jack Daniels
I
Honey,
think your strategy may have backfired a little bit.
Good Times, King's Family Estate,
to flip
Ryconic,
the
and Belle Meade
pages
Honey Cask.
around.
Literally flip the script.
Hey, we'll talk about these changes, and we'll talk about all these products after we come back here from the break. So,
Do we need to do a redo?
hey, welcome back to Sip Suds and Smokes. This is your host of this episode, good old boy Mike, and we're going through an episode talking about a blind tasting of honey cask finish whiskey.
I felt blind after it.
And I love the fact that Julieanna actually got lost in her script. So
I did.
Yeah, a little bit. So
It's great.
the one production choice that seems to have a marked difference in these products is how and when the honey is actually introduced into the whiskey itself. So some of these flavored are actually in a post-aging condition. So some of these honeys have actually been blended with the whiskey at various stages.
And these choices do impact the flavor.
And the thing
They
that I
do.
love is that Julieanna and I are actually, we're sitting across from each other. And I love the fact that, so she and I have actually seen this process in production at different points in time and with different versions and different distillers. And so I really love, because it was really interesting. And I was actually watching all this frustration that was actually washing over the distilling team at Nelson Greenbrier with the first batch.
As it was washing all over the
It
floor.
was just flowing all over
yeah.
the place. So,
Alcohol use.
Barger,
Yeah.
you're going to tell us what happens with all of these choices.
well, as we know, all these choices impact the flavor.
As we know.
But also production time, which translates
And the
to cost
production
as well. Some of these products are flavored in
Sticky.
minutes as opposed to aging for honey about 6 months. So, and then the whiskey is seasoned in the barrel another 6 months. Huge differences in cost, time, and effort. So back to our number one on this honey cask blend.
So out of these products that
royal
we've gone
choice.
through here, I'm just gonna. We've mentioned it a couple of times. Can you guess what it is?
Queens?
Because I wanted
Kings.
to roll.
Kings.
So
Kings.
you may not know this label, King's Family Estate. So it is
Not Kings County.
not Kings County. That
But
is
we love
correct.
them.
I know. We do love
So,
them.
King's Family Estate is a independent bottler that is based out of East Tennessee. They are primarily using MGP based products for many of the things they've put together.
The whiskey things, yes.
The product that they use specifically was actually one of the only ryes, or one of the few ryes in this lineup, which is Ryconic. And it is actually one of my favorite, products in their entire lineup for the King's Family Estate. And it is a wonderful blend of rye. It is actually not a single barrel, although I suspect that they probably produced this version of the honey version in a small batch.
Yeah.
I'm probably guessing like 3 or 4 barrels. What do you guys carry?
Well, I've been over there and seen how they do this. They are working out of a tiny facility, so they are trying to make the most of every square foot and
they're doing a good
small
job.
batch. Doing it small batch. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we've said this. It's all blind, but this is a product I rated number 1 out of the 12.
So let's hear your tasting notes specifically around the King's Reserve that you wrote down in the middle of the blind.
So I took a little different approach to this because it was all honey finished. So I had in the categories that I was rating it, like honey on the nose, honey on the palate, and then overall palate and finish and the normal things I would do. So I just thought that the honey was so consistent through the entire piece of it, which in a lot of these it was missing somewhere. Or it was,
I agree.
It would fall off, or it would come
Out
on
of
late.
balance somehow.
Or it
There
smelled
was-
it but didn't
Yeah.
taste it.
And for this one, it just really was a nice, like it was present on the nose, and it took you from the front to the mid to the finish. It was just like, it was there all the time. It was never overwhelming the whiskey, and it was really nicely balanced and beautiful.
See, I had put that it was, the smell, the overall aroma of it smelled good, and it was blended. It was blended really well, the honey with the rye smell aroma to it. And at first it was a little bit harsh, but it decently finished out smoothly. And it just had a really good finish to it.
It's interesting listening to this because, how you judge something in a blind, how you approach things. Cary Ann talking about, was the honey there on the front, in the middle, at the end? I tried to taste mine. Yes, was the honey there, but also like, would I just drink this as a bourbon first? Like, is the whiskey solid? So
That's good.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
tasting the Kings, first thing I got is like turpentine and baking spices on the nose.
Wow.
Which
Turpentine.
then went into an exquisitely balanced palate. The sweetness really popped. The honey
turpentine.
Well,
Go ahead,
I mean,
write that down.
on
Blowing it
the
up here.
on the nose. I mean, come on. I don't know if what proof was this?
I
You
know.
smell anything?
Well,
It's
I
going
would
to
say
smell hot.
across the board, the nose of any of these were not like phenomenal. The honey does something to the nose that really mutes
It knocks it down.
And yeah,
I
so I wouldn't say the nose on any of them got like the greatest rating.
But the finish on it was forever, and it
Yeah.
was like warm cinnamon honey butter, like just
The Starlight
just
smelled the best to me.
Thick, delicious.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Julieanna.
weird. It's weird because I did not rate this as my number 1.
It's okay.
It's all right.
That's fine. I
It
didn't
just-
either.
What'd you think when you tasted it?
Yeah.
It was okay.
It was okay.
I know, like
Was the honey there?
the honey was there, but it wasn't my be all end all.
Fair. Were you rating on honey first or more whiskey?
Okay, so when I thought about this whole thing, and I thought about whiskey that had a honey cast to it, I didn't think that this was the number 1.
Fair.
I know.
So there were
Where was it in your rating?
This was number 3.
Yeah,
Well,
so it
I
was still in the
mean,
top 5.
yeah.
It's still in your top
It
five.
was,
This is not-
but
this
it
was
wasn't
my
my
number
be all
one.
end all.
Yeah. But out of 12,
That's exactly
I mean,
where
your
I
top
had it.
3 is
I
great.
had it in the top
Yeah.
5, and I like the way that Cary Ann is describing this, because I think that I think to walk into this and say, what were you looking for? And I think, and I'm enjoying the conversation about the unencumbered, instructions that each of you had around each
yeah,
of
we
this,
had
which
none.
was none of
Our
you.
leadership is great. We
I
had
didn't.
no
I didn't step in and say,
It was like,
you're
here's a
tasting
bag of liquor, do this,
You're
drink this.
tasting this for the
I know.
whiskey, or you're tasting this for the honey, or you're trying to find out who had the best, production technique. None of that. All
Yeah.
you were doing is you just had a glass and a bottle,
Yeah.
and you were trying to
Right.
figure
Well,
out.
I love that you did the video on it, because I was like, when I approach it,
There was
for
a video?
any blind tasting, I am going to taste. I'm going to evaluate it for its nose, for the palate, for the finish. There's like things I'm going to evaluate across the board. For this one, I'm like, do I have honey on the nose? Do I have honey on the palate? But still also evaluating it separately. I wanted to know how that honey was integrated, and was it in a for better or for worse
Yeah, was it
situation.
integrated?
Did you compare across the flight? Because one of the things
I
that I
did.
did was I looked back and I was like, did this stand out
On the
compared to
second
the
and
ones
third
that were the
round.
same to me?
I think that I was just.
I revisited.
So I really appreciate those of you that So I did produce a very small series of videos as I was going through this blind. If you'd like to know, a process of going through a blind tasting, great. This is the process I use. It's not the only one on the planet by any means at all.
It's not the Barger method.
But there were no blunts involved. So but I think that I was really so I will confess that I was looking for balance.
Okay.
In the overall.
what I was looking
and
for, too.
not
Sure.
necessarily. And I was really looking to say, at the end of the day, were you actually honoring the use of the honey?
That's-
that you were doing at the
Or
end
the
of the
use of the
Yeah.
whiskey.
That's what I thought.
So that's what I would use one word
Yeah.
for, to say integration. And
So
you could,
Okay.
one of the things we
Yeah,
have
that's fair.
on the beer shows
Yeah, that's
is
fair.
especially for barrel aged beers, is it more barrel than beer or beer than barrel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always that sense of balance between them. And I
Yeah.
think that is exactly what you're really going for in any finished cask product itself. And for me, here with the King's Reserve, some of my own tasting notes, I actually wrote down woody, kind of sweet honey. I actually there was a touch of cinnamon that was over the mid palate, and it had a woody, kind of medium finish to it. So it had a very good overall, presentation. This was not my number one pick. But I felt that it definitely is right where we put it, which is in the top 3. And it overall is our number one pick, is the King's Family Estate. What's your rating on this, guys? A lot of. All right, I'm going to go for it. It's going to be a 4.
5.5.
Between all of those is a Sips rating of 4. And actually, this was my choice of the next barrel that we were actually going to do at Whiskey House Nashville was with a rye.
Love it.
Is that what
Oh,
WH
wow.
And
means?
so I am,
Okay.
Maybe.
just so, I love the fact that somebody has beaten me to the punch. They've done this with a really good MGP, batch. And so I really think that is the magic combination, to have something that is a little bit spicy, a little
Yeah.
bit hot, and a little bit sweet. I really
See,
think
the
that
rye
is-
really brings out the sweetness of the honey.
yeah.
It's more
I really-
balanced.
I really do
it's
love it.
It's absolutely balanced, and I think when you're talking about what I looked for, I didn't watch your videos. Sorry,
That's okay.
I'm a little short with emails.
Next week.
So yeah, I'll catch it next time. But
Most expendable crew member.
yeah, I know, right? But I went
Brownie
in.
Love your red shirt, man.
I literally went in and was like, what makes me think of honey when I smell it and when I drink it?
Okay.
Like, what is the best representation of honey? And also,
So you were looking for honey first.
I was looking for honey first,
I'm looking for honey.
but right, we'll talk later. It's fine.
That's not my wife.
It was close.
Yeah,
close.
it was just, I really wanted it to represent it well.
Also along here to our number 2 pick was actually from Starlight. So if you are not familiar with this distillery, they're fairly new to
The Huber family?
Huber family is
They've
fairly.
kind of been around forever.
They've been around as
They
Huber
might
for a
have
long
grown
time.
some
but
apples once and
The Starlight brand has only been around for about 4 years now, and they have done
Killed it.
They've done a very good job of actually creating their own distillate.
Is this their own distillate that we tasted?
It is their own distillate that we've tasted in this rendition. And, I have probably had, probably 50, 60 different barrels of Starlight, and it's,
I had 50 or 60 that one day I went up to visit them.
it's very typical of any single barrel tasting. You're going to have some that are great. You're going to have some that are, not so great. You're going to have a lot of things that are in the middle. That really doesn't matter, specifically, where you wind up. But what'd you guys think of the Starlight?
So I'm just now matching the samples
Where we
to my
are?
notes. No, so I didn't know until just now what we're tasting. So I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, it's greatly balanced with the honey and the
I
whiskey.
actually wrote that word down. Good balance.
I finished with balance, exclamation point, underline.
I had a but.
I can't spell balance.
It has some green notes, but I think
did.
it worked
You
with
and your
the
electrician.
honey. The green notes worked with the honey. So I really still liked it, but I could still taste that it was young whiskey.
I think
so
it was a
I think
spicy
that's
finish
really
thing
interesting.
that, kind of got me as saying, it was a little bit on the young side. So, Julieanna,
What?
what'd you think of this?
I loved it. This was my number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
As it
I'm
was for a
weird.
lot of people.
No,
No,
it's
it's-
great.
It
I
was
think it's
good.
great.
I went.
It's in my top five.
I went. So my notes were like, it smells good, it tastes good, but meh,
I would say the
it just
vast,
didn't
And
finish
I
well.
like the greenness of it.
Yeah.
the vast majority of the Starlight products that I've actually enjoyed are the sherry finish products from Starlight.
That's fair.
They've actually
I
been
agree.
quite good.
Yeah.
I would
don't
say
agree with
that
that.
a lot of the Starlight products that are currently available on the market have been a bit corn forward.
Yeah.
It's just a component of time. Do I think they're on the right path? Do I think those are going to be amazing
Absolutely.
products?
Yeah.
When they hit
They're
like
doing
that
great stuff.
Absolutely.
8 and 10 year, period, they're just going to be really, really
And
amazing.
they're throwing every noodle at the wall.
Yeah.
I love that they're trying everything. And some of their finishes are like rocking the house, and some of them are like, meh.
Yeah. I like that they're
But
trying
they're
to.
working on it, and they're just like, see what works. And I think Christian and those guys are doing a great job.
I'd say they're highly underrated.
yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So
Keep it that
Yes.
See, I've had a lot of their stuff, and I've not really been a fan. This was an outlier for
Yeah,
me.
and I
I,
was
I,
just-
I looked back at my rating on this, and I was like, really?
I know.
This is them?
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I had the exact same reaction, Drew, because, outside of those PX Sherry finished, cask, I'm like, okay, I'm just, I'm a fan, but I'm like in the fan, in the on deck circle. I can see where they're going. I want to give it another 3 years,
Yeah.
to be there. I think there are a lot of people that are kind of pouring, a lot of energy and money and cash, into them right now. I think that's great. That's fantastic for
Yeah.
them. But at the end of the day, when I look at everything that's on the shelf, I'm like, there's just some other choices that are
Price
there.
to value.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I've been up there. I've tasted a lot of barrels of all kinds of finishes, and I think, some of them maybe just weren't ready yet, and some of them would,
Yeah.
be better if the whiskey was a little older before they went into the finish. But what they're doing, I think, is sustainable, and I can't wait to see what comes in the
See,
next
I'm a
5
price
years.
point.
I agree.
I'm a price point nerd on that one. Like, I think their price point per quality is just not there for me yet.
well,
But I'm a fan, and I'm there with them.
Starlight, Star Bright.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
let's pick out your rating here for Starlight. Hey, it is across the board, which is a SIPS rating of 4. So well done. And
Yeah,
I think
good
that's
job, guys.
great. That I absolutely want to declare that both their sherry finished and that honey cask finished are absolutely the stars.
They're
Of
beautiful.
Yeah, if
their-
you can
of that
find 'em, get
program
'em.
right now.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah, if
For
you could
sure.
find them, get
Can
them. But
I-
don't hoard them. Save some for everyone
Can
else.
I take the
Yeah.
third
Exactly.
one as the outlier?
Take it.
Well, so very interesting. The number 3 in our overall top 5 is actually going to be the Belle Meade.
Yeah.
And
so the question
the
is,
OG.
I don't know which Belle Meade. So there's,
I believe it was the
there's
19.
questions. We have to know which
There-
Belle Meade,
there
what
are.
proof. I don't know
So
any of the
Exactly.
things about this Belle
Exactly.
Meade.
I remember when this episode was being sourced products wise. I want to say this was the 19.
I don't
Honestly,
believe it
I don't
was.
know.
I think it was
I've
20.
looked at the label several times. So I know some things it is not. It is not from the first year. It is not from the second year.
Well, we're both wrong.
It may be from the third year, and there were multiple versions of the third year. So
Oh my God.
the thing is with the Belle Meade Reserve, there have been 12 to 13 barrels that have actually been finished in honey cask. There are some of those barrels that they've never exited Tennessee. They absolutely did not even move across state lines at all.
There's barely left the town.
There's actually one barrel that actually went to Constellation that did the opposite, that went to every place outside of Tennessee and never came into
But
Tennessee.
not in Tennessee.
That is correct.
Constellation.
Yeah. So Constellation does own Nelson Green Bar now. So this is, I think, one of the difficult parts about our discussion here is that this product is sunset. There will not be a
once it's gone,
13th
it's
barrel of Belle Meade, Reserve.
Is this official?
True.
It is. And so I had hoped that in this tasting, we were going to actually introduce their new product, which is actually going to be
I have side notes on that.
is going to be Nelson Brothers. That is going to be finished off in a honey cask finish. Is going to be the follow-on product to this. Very, very different base whiskey.
Will there be Krispy Kremes and a line at 7 a.m.?
So, I
know,
did reach
right?
Probably.
out
She
to
did.
Charlie and Andy and asked them numerous times, did not give up until yesterday.
Yeah.
And
What, you gave up?
It's just not ready.
so what's happening right now is they have ability to bottle it. They don't know exactly when they're going to. And so they didn't know when we might air. And anyway,
okay.
so the new stuff we didn't get to put into this blind, but I'm sure we'll find another opportunity to talk about it. And those guys are,
Salt
really
of the
just
earth.
pushing the envelope on this. Like nobody was doing this before they did it.
They started it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I find interesting is that you do not see a line of 1,000+ people in front of any of these other distilleries.
You don't see the line of 1,000+ people in Nashville for pretty much anything. Let's be
So-
honest.
7 days after a tornado
true.
ripped through
Yeah.
our
Right.
city.
Yeah, that was gnarly. That
Very
line
much
was
so.
so long.
Yeah. So I think it's really amazing. We'll talk about this more right after this break. Hey, welcome back to Sip Suds and Smokes. Today we're actually talking about the honey cask finish blind tasting that we've gone through. I'm your host here, good old boy Mike, and we're just talking about the Belle Meade Reserve honey cask finish product. This is kind of like, a bit of the standard, in this,
This is
particular
standard,
line.
but also crazy unicorn.
Very much so.
It is.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting, Carrie-Ann and I have like all these points of contact with both Andy and Charlie Nelson, and at different times. Sometimes we've been staying there together. Sometimes we've, caught them at different times. And the thing is that I can't remember who asked me the question, which is why did they even decide to do this to begin with? And part of it was they were going through a wide range of secondary cask finishes. They were actively pursuing going after doing it with sherry to begin with, which
Daddy
was
needs
actually
more
the
10-knot
very
casks.
first product that they did in a cask finish with, and all of this was using MGP source products. The second one they did is, I believe, it was cognac, and they did it in a couple of different versions. They did it with straight up cognac in the XO as well. And then so it all depends on what part of the conversation you kind of pick up at that point. But I really think it was their barrel broker was the one that kind of talked them into going down this series of actually looking at a broad range of products that had never been utilized. And I think that the discussion about coming up and seasoning a honey cask was something actually born out of that conversation of going, well, how many secondary finishes actually can we do? And they were going through a broad range of mostly wine-based
Yeah.
and other
But
spirit-based
also, you're talking
barrels.
about like what barrels are available to us
Correct.
that have had something else in them. And then now this door opens up to we can make our own secondary
seasoned
cask.
barrel, yeah.
So I think it's just a different world that they entered. And now, I mean, for good reason, everybody jumped on board.
And I think that has been one of the distinguishing components when I look at probably the most perspective production process.
I mean, unless you count Tabasco finish.
Is that
There's an all Tabasco barrel finish?
I think that, there are some folks here that chose a very different production process.
Yeah.
They chose not to season a barrel. They chose not to go that extra 9 months, to actually go through, the process of creating their own seasoned barrels.
I wonder which ones use extract as well.
Well, and I think that
it's pretty apparent.
I'd
when
like
you
to think
taste
that
them.
those are the people that are
Yes.
actually at the bottom of the list here. So
Right.
do I think that...
What about honeycomb?
And at the bottom of the list
Fair.
was actually with Wild Turkey and with Jack. And I think
Which
that...
don't count.
Which don't count because
They're not
I
whiskey.
do believe that is a flavored whiskey process.
it
and I
is.
really tried hard to actually confirm that was the case, but
They
I don't,
are.
I don't have anybody that's stepping up and saying, absolutely, we're creating our own seasoned barrel.
We gotta call
actually
Goose.
do
Well,
this.
so the difference is what it says on the front of the label. It's not whiskey finished in honey cask.
Exactly.
It is flavored whiskey.
Flavored
And
whiskey.
both Wild Turkey and Jack Daniel's honey, they carry that label of flavored whiskey.
And flavored
Yeah.
whiskey is not a
Exactly.
regulated term, correct?
It is
Right.
regulated,
Well,
but it's
and so that's
it's-
what I like
it's
about-
that there's more to it than we put it in a cask that had something else in
so
it.
that's what I really love about what this blind tasting has done is it has absolutely set the bar of saying, I don't really care what your production process
Right.
is. I just want to know that if you're tasting something in the glass, is it better or worse? And I think that this is actually, to me, my answer is that I think that it's flushed that out to say, at the end of the day, if you go the extract route and flavor up the whiskey on the back end, you're losing it, man.
That's right.
You're going to lose the complexity.
You're
Listen,
missing the
Wild
mark.
Turkey honey and Jack Daniel's honey have followings that are
And they're not the same drinkers that
Beyond.
are drinking the
they're,
beginning of
they're
this.
the
They're
people who
beyond.
mix
Those
it.
are solid products. They're doing their own thing with them, but they're not the same as this category.
You
I
talking
know.
about
You
what
don't-
Aunt Martha
No.
likes?
Yeah.
Because
I
thought
that's
you
what
just
I buy her
kind of,
every
like-
Friday. I get
She
her
puts
a fifth
apples
of
in it.
American
Right.
honey, man.
I thought you
She
threw
loves
these
that
in here
stuff.
to with us,
I
not to
did too.
actually compare.
I did too.
Because they were very obvious, like from the nose
They were.
on. They
Yeah.
were
Right.
Even just
very, very
looking at it.
different situations.
Even at that though, I think it's wise to put them in the category because you now know what not to do, what you don't want.
Sure.
You know what I'm
it's
saying?
not
Or
what
what you're
not to
missing.
do.
Yeah, or what you're
There's
missing.
A finished
It's two
product
different
and there's a
drinkers.
flavored product.
It's all
They're not
about
the same
drinkers.
thing.
To me, it's all
Agreed.
about the base product.
So
Like
what
if
are
your
your
base
all about
product is
that
not
base.
good, the end result's not going to be. And I'm not saying those products aren't good because
Sure.
those products are
But they're
we all
not
know
in the
Wild
same
Turkey's
category.
great.
You
We all
can't
know-
compare them.
But,
I'm going to agree
you know,
with Cary Ann on this one because at the end of the
What?
day, it's about what somebody wants to
Just
the
get out.
buyer.
Exactly.
It's what the buyer is drinking. You know.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about-
I don't like the Wild Turkey or the Jack Daniel's honey, but they sell a lot of
Listen,
it because
They
a lot of
do.
people do.
Wild Turkey
They
and
sell a
Jack
lot more
Daniel's
than 12
honey
barrels.
have
Yeah.
their place. And if I want a hot toddy, I am putting some Wild Turkey or some Jack Daniel's honey in it if I have a little situation. So, no, they're different.
write
They're
that down.
different.
Gary has a little
If
situation.
If
situation.
I have a little situation
Add
that
Jack
starts
Daniel's
with
honey.
Co and ends with Vid, then I want a little hot toddy, and it's going to have
What
one
did you
of those
guys-
honey products
So
in it.
let's specifically talk about this Belle Meade. What are your tasting notes around this? And so we can understand why it actually hit the top 5 here. So
This was actually
Well, the whiskey's great.
Yeah, this was actually the first one I drank. And it was very honey forward and it was a good burn and it was light and airy and the finish was just crisp. Like, like you want it
I have
to
in
be.
my notes that the honey is front loaded.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of honey
I
on
said
the
it
front.
peaked quickly.
it's interesting.
Heard that about you.
I was shocked at my own. So I actually wrote down faint,
15-year
subtle
wedding
wood.
anniversary coming up soon, bro.
I wrote down good balance. Love the long finish, and I actually wrote down the word not complex. So, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Juliana, what do you think?
I had a lot of molasses on this.
Really?
Interesting.
Yes.
I get that.
Not honey,
Okay.
but molasses.
So
No,
full-blown
but
burnt
a
sugar.
lot of molasses.
Yeah.
So this wasn't like top tier, but it was close.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah,
ranked
I
it as
thought
your number 2, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was number 2.
I ranked it
for
as
me.
my number 3. I thought it was great balance and everything, but the honey was all on the front, and then it just kind of went.
Okay.
We'll see your ratings here for the Belle Meade Reserve. So, wow, looks like it's across the board again.
I will say, as the outlier who ranked this as 8 out of 12.
Oops.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So
it's the comparison.
It was 1
Okay.
out of 12 for me.
It was the comparison. There were other rye forward whiskeys that I thought were more balanced
Fine.
because I looked at them together.
Yeah.
That was
let's move on to the next thing here in the top 5, which is Nashville Barrel Company. If you're not quite familiar with this
Yay.
product, they're actually an expanding brand that has moved into a lot of states. They are using all products that have been sourced through MGP in Indiana, once again.
MGP, what up?
And actually, this is a bourbon, which is an interesting choice because they actually work with both bourbon and rye, but they work primarily with a lot of rye.
Yeah, they're rye heavy.
And so these are good friends. I mean, we definitely know, the folks that are behind this brand, intimately. And it was really interesting. So I actually, talked with, James a bit about their production technique, a little different than they chose at Belle Meade, a little bit of an accelerated process.
did they heat it up?
No, not quite.
This is a complicated process, and
It
trying
can
to
be.
work it out
Yeah.
is difficult. So,
It's hard.
I mean,
it's hard.
Any way that people are trying to do it, I'm here for it.
Yeah. So, this is batch 1. We've had some of the other batches, which
Yeah.
I think are actually better than batch 1 overall. But here in the blind itself, some of my tasting notes here for NBC were, again, almost identical to some of the things that I wrote about Belle Meade. Faint wood, fairly balanced kind of wood. There's actually a hint of cinnamon in the mid palate. I actually wrote down the word diluted honey. So
I didn't get that.
yeah,
I just thought it was boozy.
This was my favorite
Yeah.
nose. Carrie Ann's point about they didn't have good noses. I thought this one actually had a very pleasant nose. It was rock candy, molasses, and then I had what I called buttered biscuits, which is common, but then it got almost cloyingly sweet. And
Really?
it finished.
wow.
It finished oaky. They say the oak eventually won out over the cloying honey sweetness, but. I don't know. It was interesting. I'll have to try it again.
This landed flat in the middle for me. It was a good example. It wasn't a great example. I thought the honey was there and it all kind of fell off. I didn't love the finish, but it wasn't.
it felt like a freshman attempt,
See, yeah, it did
it
definitely
did.
that. But
which it was.
Okay.
I put it in my number 4 though because I thought it was, it was bold, but yet it still had a honey flavor to it, and it wasn't over the top.
Yeah.
It's like they didn't focus so much on the honey as they did the bourbon. And like I said earlier, the base product was a good product. So when you have a good base product, you're going to have a good product.
Good place to start.
Sure. And I love the tobacco on it.
Yeah.
You love
Yeah,
the tobacco
I know.
on this?
I
That's the
really,
bourbon.
I know, but I really enjoy the tobacco combined with the honey on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gives it a little more complexity.
I get that.
can
Yeah,
see.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Do we know how old that whiskey was?
Probably a 4 or 5 year.
I'm
normally
going with
5 year.
Barger.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to go
Maybe
say
5
it
or
was
6, yeah.
5-year bourbon that they used for that. So, anyway, what's your rating here for the NBC finish here? So we're going to go with a 3 for this.
Interesting.
Overall, we have time to talk about our 5th choice here very briefly, which is from this is Davidson Reserve, and this particular version is the Tennessee whiskey version, which I know that Cary Ann has worked quite a bit with Pennington, and
I'm so excited that we have 2 Tennessee products.
yeah,
in the
it was
title,
interesting.
right? Or
So
3, actually.
both of these
Sort
did
of,
very well.
yeah.
So there were 2. There was a bourbon and a Tennessee whiskey in here, and actually both of them did quite well.
Yeah.
In
But the
this
Tennessee
overall.
whiskey was
Just a little bit better than the reserve. Than the bourbon. I like the bourbon better than the Tennessee whiskey. So the Tennessee whiskey actually is a bit younger. Am I right with that, Cary Ann? I
think so.
I think that's probably the case by maybe
Yeah.
1 or 2 years
It's a 3 year,
at the
isn't it?
most.
No, they don't put anything on.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to put anything out that young.
Oh.
So what did you guys write about the Tennessee whiskey from Davidson?
least in your face honey that there was.
Interesting.
It was
The
there,
honey for
but
me
it was well
on,
incorporated.
Like
Yeah,
the back
it was
palate.
interesting.
It was there throughout the thing, but it really hit you in the finish, the very back palate and the finish. And the finish
Okay.
just went on for me.
Yeah.
I
Agreed.
thought that the finish was fantastic.
I actually wrote down deep, complex, age. I actually wrote down that it was kind of corn forward, but it was masked with the honey really quite well. And it had kind of a medium finish to it. So this was actually in the middle of, my ranking overall, but I thought that it was an excellent approach. And
Lincoln County process.
See, I'm an outlier
I
on
know,
this
right?
one. I put it was very charcoal forward, and it was subtle honey.
See, I did write down
And-
heavy char.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
The charcoal on it was all I could taste on the finish.
well, let's rate up here the Davidson Tennessee whiskey version that you have here. I am going to go with 3 on this.
Interesting.
Sips rating of 3 for the Davidson Reserve Tennessee Whiskey Edition. I want to cover some time, kind of what's some things that were here at the bottom. So we kind of briefly touched on a couple of that were at the bottom, which was Jack Daniel's as well as the Wild Turkey product here. And I think we both agree that one of the some of the key things that were missing there, it just
Whiskey?
they
Yeah.
were just not. I mean, what
they're
were some
not
of your
finished-
tasting notes?
They're not finished whiskeys, and they were very
No.
apparently
No.
artificially flavored. Like they were
Yep.
flavored whiskeys.
So
You
I
could
actually
tell
wrote down
off the
Yeah.
with
bat.
Wild Turkey. I wrote down pure sugar, no
Yeah.
alcohol, icky. I think that Barger's tasting notes were no.
Yeah. That's exactly. It's just 7 no's. No.
I have a sad face and flavored, and I have.
Julieanna, what were some of your tasting notes on Wild Turkey other than
It
icky?
was like Drambuie.
Artificial.
Drambuie.
Sweet,
No,
sweet,
it was
sweet.
so sweet.
I agree.
Yeah.
It was just like a sugar cane all the way.
Exactly.
Is this whiskey?
That's what I thought about Jack Daniel's and Wild Turkey.
But I
was
can
it was
tell you
just
when
sugar
I found
water.
out what we were
WTF.
drinking, I was pleased because those notes that I was like, this is artificial, this is really saccharine. Like there's all this. Like this isn't. If they were doing a finished barrel, this is cheating.
Yep.
So I was
So,
glad to know that.
Can we establish our rating here for the Wild Turkey?
I don't think they should be rated
Yeah,
in this
I
category.
can't give it an actual number.
It's
we're gonna
not
call
in
it
the
a
same.
one.
No.
So yeah,
They don't.
for sure.
This is apples and oranges. I
So
don't think it's
let's
fair.
move
Exactly.
up just
They're
a
both
little
fruit.
bit beyond that. So actually, at the bottom of all of the rankings was actually the pick from Nulu,
Which is
which
MGP,
was
isn't it?
It was MGP, and so
Huh.
there
Yeah.
are a lot
Yeah,
of
but all of
fans
these
of
are
Nulu.
MGP.
Well, right, but we have an
No, a lot of
MGP
them
that's at the
no.
bottom and an MGP that's at the top.
Yeah. So what happened?
So it's not the
at
whiskey.
Nulu
It's not
that
just
was-
the whiskey.
It's what they did.
Interesting.
So, what are some of your tasting notes around Nulu that actually brought you to kind of move that along?
I
So-
put it was very honey forward.
actually.
It was. It was
Acetone.
very
Yeah,
honey.
I actually have the
On
word
the
faint
nose.
kerosene written
So-
down.
On the nose,
Acetone
I
and
have
marzipan.
off.
Yeah,
There you go.
I put honey forward, and then in parentheses I put nope.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There was something not
It
right
wasn't
on it.
balanced.
I don't know if that was a combination of the whiskey that they chose or the production technique, but it was not working across the
No.
board. I do not write down the
So when
word
I
faint
smell what I
kerosene.
smelled, I didn't taste it, to be
Garbage.
honest.
Let's write this up
Exactly.
real
I
quick.
was like,
so for Nulu, I'm also going to say it's a 1. So there we go. Did you guys like this process overall? I love this
Yeah.
blind.
I had a good
I
time.
really did.
I think probably if anybody was going to try this at home, that they should definitely set out from the beginning, like what's most important. Is the bourbon most important?
Yeah.
Is the honey most important?
Yeah.
What's
Balance.
settle on what you're going to
Balance.
decide before you do it.
Exactly.
Integration. How does
Right.
the honey enhance
Right.
the whiskey?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I really, I thought this was a great exercise. I'm so glad we got to go through this, together. Such great palettes, that all of you brought to the table.
Best.
And, the discussion today, it was really fantastic. So I want to thank each one of you. So, good old gal Julieanna, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, wow, I'm still here. Good old
I know.
Good old
It's
gal
great.
Cary Ann, thank you for joining us for this episode.
Thank you. This was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Good old boy Barger.
You're welcome. And thank
Says
you.
the expendable crew member. Good old boy Drew.
It was a great time. Thanks.
Hey, this is good old boy Mike asking you to come back, enjoy another riveting episode of Sip Suds and Smokes, maybe with or without Barger. And I'll ask you
put my red shirt up
to keep on sipping for sure. 1 honey, 2 honeys. Kings.
Kings, baby.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're listening to us online, do yourself a favor and tap
Tap it in.
the subscribe button.
Give it a little tappy. Tap, tap, tap-a-roo.
The easiest way to listen to our show is to ask Siri, Alexa, Google, Uncle Larry, or whoever it is that talks to you on your phone. Play podcast Sip Suds and Smokes. We love your feedback, and you can reach us at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our tasting notes flow out on Twitter and Instagram with our handle @SipSudsAndSmokes, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. You'll also be able to interact with the thousands,
Millions and millions
of other fans on those social media platforms. Do us a favor. Take the time to rate this episode if you're listening to us online. That's a big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. Come back, join us for another episode, and keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip Suds and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see y'all next time.